Welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, where today we will interview Megan Ferland, Executive Director of Washington Masonic Services.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com.
Today on the Working Tools Podcast, we have our usual gang of four hosts. We have Brother Craig Graham, who's a member of Kalamalka Lodge number 160 in Vernon, British Columbia. Very worshipful Brother Stephen Chung from Prince Charles Lodge number 60 in Kelowna, British Columbia. Yeah, eventually I remembered. David Colbeth from King Solomon 60 down in Auburn, Washington. I'm at Appel from Mill Creek 243, and we meet in Montlake Terrace, Washington. And we are honored to have with us today Megan Ferland, who is the Executive Director of Washington Masonic Services. And I think I just realized I messed up Steve's lodge number while I was doing that. But as usual, we'll just keep rolling with all of my multitude of errors. So Megan, thanks for coming on the show. We appreciate having you here. And thanks.
Thrilled to be here.
So I guess my first sort of two of us, I'm currently on the board of Masonic Services and David has been, but I'll ask the obvious question anyway of what is Washington Masonic Services? What do you guys do down there?
Sure. So first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to be on the Working Tools Podcast. Washington Masonic Services is the designated charitable arm of the Grand Lodge of Washington. And so we have several core programs. The mission actually dates back nearly 100 years to when the Masonic retirement homes were first opened. The first Masonic retirement home started accepting clients, if you will, back in 1927. And that actually established the purpose that we still carry on through our outreach services program, providing support for seniors and their families, as well as for other people who are facing really critical, urgent crises, like for food or shelter, that kind of thing. Over the years, what happened was Grand Lodge wound up consolidating other parts of its nonprofit work under the Washington Masonic Charities umbrella, and I'll address that here in just a minute, but under the Washington Masonic Charities umbrella. And so the mission then grew to include a focus on youth investment, student investment, and also providing, really focusing on Masonic heritage. The main part of that is operating the Washington Masonic Library and Museum. You've had our curator, Chelsea Hansen, on the podcast before. But Masonic heritage is also things that go toward the fabric of Masonry. So we are working with the Grand Master this year. His Grand Master's charity is establishing an endowment for Lodge Leadership Retreat scholarships. That falls in our mind under that Masonic heritage part of our mission, because lodges are bedrock to Masonry. So part of Masonic heritage. So those three core programs, outreach services, student investment, and Masonic heritage, that is what we do. It is all about how can we be of service to Masons, their families, lodges, and that word service really is the crux of what we do. Our formal legal name is still Washington Masonic Charities, but when I first came into this position, going on 4 years ago now. One of the things that I heard from our case managers is that they ran into a lot of times where people who needed help weren't willing to accept that help because they might need help, but they didn't take charity. They weren't going to take charity. And when our name that we were operating under was Washington Masonic Charity, that word charity was a hard no. I'll take help, but I'm not going to take charity. The other thing that we heard frequently was they would hear Washington Masonic Charity and think, oh, you're just going to be asking me for money. And while we are a nonprofit and we do accept donations, that's not the mission. That's not our purpose. Our purpose is service and helping people. So we adopted the doing business as Washington Masonic Service to get away from those two barriers to us being able to fulfill our mission, which is service. So, and it really has shut that down.
Well, it's hard to believe it's been 4 years.
It'll be 4 years this upcoming summer. I guess I should say it's 3.5.
But it's 4 years. It's good. It's been. What did you do before Washington Masonic Services? What kind of brought you into this world, and how did you make the connection with this organization?
Sure. So I have been in nonprofit leadership for 25 years now. My direct role before Washington Masonic Services, I was CEO for Girl Scouts of Western Washington for about 10 years. And that's what actually brought us to Washington State. But I had been CEO for two statewide kid-serving nonprofits in Colorado. And prior to that, a big nonprofit organization that supported kids in foster care in Texas. So I'm an Air Force kid. We did the whole moving around all over the place while I was growing up. And my dad, when he retired from the Air Force, we wound up in a little town outside on the outskirts of Houston, in Texas. So how I wound up doing this, when I was in grad school, I was intending to go into corporate public relations. And what happened is my older sister's husband was a police officer in Houston, and he was shot to death during a traffic stop. And the person who killed him was a repeat felon, and it wound up being this huge, very high-profile situation. And my sister, who had two, a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, wound up being on the cover of People magazine, 48 Hours. She was getting yanked on for all of these things because this was such a high profile situation. And all of these legislators were wanting her to be their name witness on their prison reform bills because the guy who killed him had just been released because of prison overcrowding that was happening in Texas at the time. So I wound up getting a job instead of going into corporate PR, and I had a job offer that was going to take me to New York, but I wound up sticking all that on hold because my family needed me. So I got a job that got me inside the state capitol as a legislative aide so I could get in front of my sister and be her shield. And that got me into public policy work. And from there, I wound up moving into a senator's office and then into the Texas Attorney General's office, and doing all of these things that got me more and more interested and focused on how do you try and help kids and help families. And so that was the trajectory for me winding up running ultimately these big nonprofits that are focused on helping kids and families. And my husband and I decided that I don't do well with heat and sun, and Texas is a whole lot of heat and sun. I also don't do well with bugs, and their bugs are so big.
Everything's big in Texas.
I know, but not all the not good things, like cockroaches and mosquitoes. And so that's, I wound up taking a job offer that took us to Colorado, and then taking a job offer that brought us to Washington State. How I wound up with this role, it's kind of ironic, or maybe it's fate, depending on what you believe in. But the guy who killed my brother-in-law was on death row for over 30 years, almost 35 years, longest inmate on Texas death row ever. And I had been approached about this position. I knew the guy who was handling the search, and he was talking to me about it, and I was considering whether or not to apply. And the execution for the guy who killed my brother-in-law was happening right in that same time frame. It was in April of 2022. And I was back down in Texas. I went with my sister and my niece and nephew to the execution. And Jimmy, my brother-in-law, was a Mason. And I was there at the hotel where we were all staying, and many of his friends, also law enforcement officers, were also Masons. And one of them, who was very dear, he was a Texas Ranger ultimately. We were sitting talking, and Gary had on a Masonic ring, and I asked him why he became a Mason. And he said something like it was what helped him become the man that he wanted to be, and that his family and his community needed him to be, something along those lines. And it was that whole exchange with this fine man who loved my brother-in-law, and there were several of them there who fell in that category, that made me decide that I was going to go ahead and go for this role. So,
wow,
here we are.
What a connection!
Yeah.
That's incredible. That little segment could just be a billboard for Masonry. Really, I mean, ultimately too, the idea that these, and when we've listened to a lot of stories on this show over the last 6 years, 7 years, and it's interesting to hear how some of those fine threads are what brings men or people to this organization. And so it's really special. Really neat to hear that. And condolences to your family, but what a neat outcome for you anyway, for us and for us.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's sometimes there's a silver lining in every adversity. And many times it's the journey through that, but sometimes it's the outcome as well. So how did you, when you were being asked about this, other than that interaction, was there more to, you were in Colorado at the time, or you were in Washington?
No, we were in
That's
Washington.
right.
We came up here, yeah,
You'd
when I
already
took
been
the
here.
position with Girl Scouts. That's what brought us up here.
Yeah.
So we've been here for over 10 years.
Yeah. Already.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. It's always fascinating to me how that process works, how the search process works and conversion process works. But well, I know we're very fortunate to have you. It's I know the organization has really enjoyed your tenure, and there's been a lot of changes too since you've kind of come on. What are some of those things that have happened? I guess whether because of your journey or just as part of the change.
When I think about it, and it's actually kind of perfect timing, because we just in September we did a board retreat, and we spent some time looking back over the 3+ years, and from a strategic standpoint, and then looking ahead over the next 3 years. But when I came in, I was very fortunate to inherit a strong, stable organization that was really well platformed to move into its next chapter. And I've done this several times throughout my career, and come in and done an assessment of where things are, and you do that, the SWOT analysis, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats kind of thing. And so it has not always been the case that I've come in and things have been well platformed to move on. There was a strong team, and it was also really a wonderful opportunity to identify where can things really build. And I think what is most exciting to me is when I look at where we are now and where we were when I came in, we've been able to really focus on that element of how do we serve, and in using that lens. I'm a very mission-driven person, and the team laughs at me because I've got this whiteboard sitting beside my desk, and the top of it, I have the mission statement written there. And multiple times a week, I'm looking and pointing, and how does this connect to the mission statement? How it is a living thing with me, and it drives how we make decisions. And so when we started with the rebranding, and that changing the name, because that does then change how you provide service. And all of that trickles down and allows us to then streamline operations, make it easier for people to connect with us. And we're looking at what do we need to do? How do we need to beef up, functions and personnel, and so now we have this team that is so flippin' strong, and everybody appreciates each other's skill sets. And we have a staff call every morning at 9, and it's just a joy to see these 8 people interacting and supporting each other. And it lets us now be in a position where, like, the library and museum is an opportunity to tell the Masonic story from when Washington State was a territory all the way through today, and showcase how Masons, how you all are continuing to impact communities the same way you have been for, you know, generations, and that impact will continue.
So what are some of the major advancements since you've come into this role that you've seen or implemented in the organization?
So one big thing, we did not have much of a communication function at all, and we completely redesigned the website. We've started a strong and increasingly building social media presence so people can understand who we are and what we're doing.
Which I'm sure appearing on podcasts is a huge help for that.
We're going to link to it. We're going to link to it. But for people to know what opportunities, what service, what help we can provide, what they can get with us, we've got to be telling the story. We've got to be making it known. We've got to be making it available. And for me just to sit in the office and talk about it, that's not going to do us any good. So we have to have that social media presence, and we've got to get increasingly good at it. So we have the Facebook page, we're on Instagram, we have a YouTube channel. With the Chelsea and the library and museum now, she's developed a very robust Facebook page for the library and museum that tells its story and is continuing to build and to grow. That's one thread. There's more boring stuff that is really necessary. Like we've streamlined a lot of the administrative functions to make it a whole lot easier for staff, because we have staff who are out on the other side of the state and don't operate in our office, but make it a whole lot easier for them to, put in check requests and get the service that they need to be able to provide to clients, make that process much more seamless. It's not, we can turn things around much quicker now. We've also put in place one of the things that became obvious pretty quickly was what we are good at, our niche, is we can be nimble, and we can partner with lodges to amplify what it is that you were trying to do. And that was really where the idea for Lodge Match came from. And so we've stood up that whole effort where lodges can, if you're raising money to support a local program for education, a backpack drive for school supplies kind of thing, or to support food banks. We're getting a lot of requests to to fund food bank programs right now, that kind of thing. Lodges can apply to us for a lodge match proposal, and up to $1,500 will match that, so that you can, instead of giving the food bank $1,500, you can give them $3,000, that sort of thing. And I think this year is going to be so much bigger even than last year.
And
But
you're desperately wanting people to do that, right? I mean, I know there's funds already allocated.
We want to give the money away.
At least for Washington, I know whenever it comes up, I always emphasize that. I say, brothers, they need to give this money away. So please.
It doesn't do any good just sitting in our bank account. That's
Yes.
the whole point.
Yes. And I know it's well funded and ready to go. And all you got to do is ask.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we've had to say no one time, and that's it.
Yeah.
So, and I see the concern about this going to time out.
Yeah. So we normally kind of hold our shows to about 30 minutes or so. And so what I would ask is that I wanted to ask about your change, Steve's comment about some of the things that have happened. One of the big things I think is you've had a pretty good change and also increase in staff. You kind of alluded to that a little bit. And so I was hoping maybe we could follow up on the next segment and we could chat about that.
Sure.
All right. Matt, want to take a shot?
So just by way of to peek behind the curtain, we're going to have to.
We could talk about that.
Okay. So, yeah, man, I'm a great host today. So, thank you, Megan, for being on the show. Thank you all listening to the Working Tools podcast on behalf of Craig and Stephen, David, and myself. As usual, if anybody has any interesting comments or things you'd like to see in the future, please let us know. Or if you have any commentary for Washington Masonic Services, I'm sure they'd love to field questions or issues that people may have. I guess, Megan, is there a direct way, a website or something, a direct way that they can contact services?
Absolutely. The best thing to do is to go to our website, which is www.masonscare.org, and wealth of information there, as well as our contact info.
So with that, please, if you need services and you're within the state of Washington, please please contact them, and please contact us with any questions you may have about the Working Tools podcast. Thank you. Goodbye.